On the night of February 24, Russia openly launched a full-scale war against Ukraine, attacking Kiev and other cities with missiles.
For 80 days now, Ukraine has resisted this war, does not give up, it is not going to give up, and now it is winning in certain areas. Ukraine is fighting for peace, freedom and human rights for all the world. War is terrible. I never thought that I would live in such a reality. Nevertheless, in 3 weeks I began to prepare because I knew well what the Soviet Union was and what communism was. It was clear to me that war would be inevitable. But even though I prepared, I still became stressful. In the first hours, I was looking on a line of cars with burning headlights that were leaving Kiev. It seems to me that it was like a movie, but it was reality. I asked my children not to complain and explain that there might not be any water or food since the war has begun. On the first day of the war, my children grew up a few years and began to act like adults. And I realized from my own experience that war steals childhood from children. And in the first days of the shelling of Kiev, children had already been killed. Even before the start of the war, I firmly decided that I would send my family to a safe place while I stayed in Kiev. Someone had to protect the city. I am grateful to all international friends who have supported us from the first days. I did not have time to respond to thankful words of support in all chats. When I sent my family, I went to the local medical service to help those who did not leave Kiev. Also, together with friends, we helped women and children of our friends and all those who contact us to help rescue women and children. In total, we helped to take out more than 100 people. I always considered myself a stressful, resistant person, but I never experienced such intense stress when traveling under shelling. I grew up in a countryside, and in the summer, I like to sleep outside of my parents' house in the fresh air, but here I have to sleep in a poorly ventilated basement for my safety. I woke up more than once because it seems to me that someone was knocking on the door. I ran to check who it was, but then I realized that these were explosions when Bucha and Irpin were bombed. I considered myself psychologically stable, but I realized that my mind was being shaken in the first weeks of the war. In my childhood, I loved milkshakes. In the Soviet Union times, children did not have many things to enjoy. To buy ordinary ice cream, you had to stand in a long line. My kids loved the milkshake, but I never made it for them. My wife did it. And when I was making a Molotov cocktail, I realized that this was the first cocktail in my life that I had made and how the war changes everything. If someone had told me that a Molotov cocktail would be the first one I would make, I would not have believed it. 5 kilometers before my accommodations, our soldiers stopped the enemy, but on the next street the house was completely burned down from shelling. and fragments of missiles dropped down into the yard. It was scary even for adult men like me. But later, I got an even bigger shock. It came after Bucha, Irpin and Gostomel were liberated on March 31st. I saw the faces of the police officers who went there. They didn't have faces. The horror that we learned in the first day of the liberations of these cities cannot be expressed in words. Colleagues did not have other topics in their conversations. We could not imagine hundreds of innocent civilians being killed and tortured, and women and small children being raped. It was the red line when we realized that this is war for existence of our people and our country. Our enemy wants to destroy us so that not a single person remains. They want to break us. I never felt such strength to resist in our people the enemy. During the first week of the liberation of Bucha and Irpin, my colleagues and I went there to help cure patients in the hospital and sort out humanitarian aid. A few doctors selflessly assisted in the hospital corridor without electricity and water. When the Ukrainian army liberated the Kiev region, there was no longer such a workload in the medical service. I provided psychological assistance to the civilians and together with friends and colleagues concentrated on delivering humanitarian aid to the liberated regions. We sent food to families in Chernihiv because they had nowhere to buy it. We sent donated clothes and medicines to hospitals, transferred medicines to medical outpatients clinics. Everything turned out to be necessary for the liberated territories: flashlights, batteries, power banks, etc. At the request of the National Union of Journalists and with the support of the Washington Times Foundation, a computer was donated to the editorial office of the local newspaper in the liberated town of Ivankov. With the support of friends, colleagues, and the international community, we organized to purchase and transfer of a bus for medical care in the frontline areas. Kiev returned to a peaceful life. I again started teaching online at the National Medical University, and the students revealed to me the scope and depth of the psychological trauma of Ukrainians. Some of students stayed with their families for 2 weeks in Bucha, in the house's basement, and someone's relatives could not leave Mariupol for a long time. To prevent the aggravations of psychological problems among the population, my colleagues and I organize the international projects, Safe Space to Talk, and provide psychological assistance to Ukrainians, both in Ukraine and abroad. At the moment, aid has been provided to 667 citizens of Ukraine. Spring has become. It has become warmer. For a month now, Kiev has not been shelled with rockets. Yes, there are huge cries for the gasoline. Food prices has been rising, and infrastructure is still being restored. But I could see children on the streets. Since the war had begun, all this time they were not here. The Kiev city was empty. It was so joyful to see children smile again, to hear their laughter. The town was filled with life. I saw a future to the defense of which the whole of Ukraine rose. Ukraine won Eurovision, and we will win this war because the whole world supports Ukraine. Thank everybody for your support. Poland, England, Germany, and all European Union countries, Japan, Korea, and America.
Stand with Ukraine, fighting for peace, freedom, and human rights for all world.